So I thought we'd just go through, like, I know last time I mentioned like a mix that you can all like work towards making. So I thought I made like a bit of a one page. I'll put this into the doc after, in terms of what what to look out for, or so like some guidance to help you, and then like when. So I mean, obviously there's no like rules on music. You play whatever you like, any genre. You can even do multi-genre. It's a bit of a challenge. So like Likit, when you said you just downloaded tracks from many other genres and stuff, that's really cool. It's very it can be challenging to mix, but it's worth a shot. Like, it's a learning experience. And of course, like, all sorts of transitions. I've just shown you a few example ones, like the simple intro outro, or I'm going to show you today things like looping or cue syncing. But get experimental if you want, like drown something in reverb, and then there's a big reverb tail, and then bring something out of nowhere. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. This is like for you to do. Genre jumping. So yeah, like you already spoke about this, but things like halftime transitions, if you want to try things like that, like, go nuts. This is where I got a bit arty-farty today. It happens whenever I have dal. So try and think about like the story to the mix. Like, is there like a feeling, a mood, or something that you're trying to convey? And how does each song that you select, like, how does it tell a part of that bigger story? So it doesn't have to be obvious, and like, it can only make sense to you. It's not like you have to expect everyone on the other side to be like, oh yeah, and then Prayansh said we went to the mountain. Like, it doesn't have to be like that obvious. But I'm gonna give you an example, and please tell me if you feel this is just way too arty-farty. I'll dial back on this sort of stuff. But hang on, wrong mix. So yeah, so there's this mix I made called Urban to Urban a while ago, and I'm not sharing this just to plug. I mean, you can listen if you like. But the story behind this, or kind of what triggered me to make this, is at work. I was just seeing, Sarah, you can relate, just like a lot of Indian drivers struggling with life in Australia and like paying their bills. It was just all the time, and it was getting a bit intense. And then this Aussie senator, he made this vague, useless speech about like young brown men driving his Ubers, delivering his pizzas. He said there's a brown pay gap. He made all these fairly valid points.
When did that? I'm looking this up later.
you can hear it in the mix. And then at the end of it, he thanked them, but then he did nothing about it. And it was kind of funny. Like, I just found it like, what was the point? He just went like, thank you, Rajesh. And then did nothing about it. I mean, we probably like at Uber that he did nothing about it, because that would mean more work for me. But yeah, so I just wanted to make a mix that like highlight his speech. So this is, I'm really showing you this as an example of how you can think about, I don't know, things that you care about or moods that you feel, and how you can pour that into your mix. So for example, I sampled his speech and put it in.
Today, I want to thank another group of Australians who make a great contribution to Australia. They drive me in their Ubers and taxis. They deliver my online purchases, my groceries, and my pizza. And they serve me at my local 7-Eleven, at my local service station, and my local restaurants. Mr. Acting Deputy President, let me say thank you to Australia's young brown men. Men and women.
So I wanted to highlight that speech. I used that as a bit of an intro. And then this is just me being fucking random, okay? Like, Uber Eats drivers had to go through a lot of, like, drive through a bunch of rain. So I wanted rain sounds. And then like, I like comedy, and this mix was already a bit like funny-ish because of that speech. So I had like other humorous Indian.
And I am in Namaste. My name is Dr. Mini, and I am an Indian doctor. People from all over the world come to me when they have problems. Some time ago, a young man came to my place. He said he's a musician, but
I know, sorry, you guys are probably like, what the fuck, where is this going? And then
we take some time to appreciate the album art as well.
Thanks, bro. I made it on Canva.
I see it.
And then like, yeah, just other things like referring back to how, like, like in the past, like those other colored pay gaps, and then how people push back against it, like Martin Luther King. I like that shit, so I put that in there.
But he doesn't.
Tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that once.
And then at the end, I put in my favorite sound, which is the sound of the Australian cross the road signal. Just to be like this happened in Australia. Wait, hang on. So yeah, at the end of all that, oh shit, what the hell? Stop. At the end of all that, the takeaway is like, no one gives a shit about any of that. Like, no one that's listening is gonna know that that's what it's about, or that's what this guy was trying, like, doesn't matter at all. It's a bit wanky. But the reason I'm sharing that is like, if you try and pour a little bit of yourself in your set, you know, whether it's for someone or whether there's like something that you have that's on your mind, like, I feel like your mix means more to you, and then you push a bit harder to try and get a little bit of yourself in there. So it doesn't have to be as obvious as mine. Like, I've literally put speech in there, but that's because like I also listen to a bunch of podcasts, and I was doing a lot of editing for podcasts, so I like spoken word. But if you like, I don't know, if there's a Latin song you've always liked, and you always like the acapella, Sarah, and you always wanted to put something on that acapella, and that's what started this journey, maybe this set can be about like highlighting that or whatever. So try and think about like a story. And then yeah, other more technical things, I guess, like I'd say keep it to like 5 transitions, so it's about a 20-minute mix probably. And the focus is really try and make them as smooth as possible. You can use techniques you've learned, like I've listed some here. I'll put this all on a page. I'm just going through it with you all and for the recording, but you know, like beat matching, phrasing correctly, starting on the 1, using harmonic mixing if you like it's just an option, it doesn't mean you have to use it.
Did you make that track in Tractor?
No, that's, yeah, well,
yeah, so what did you use?
Sorry, that's in Ableton. I tend to do my
Yeah,
like, mixes like that in Ableton.
so but then when we're doing our one for next week, we would be using Tractor.
Yeah, sorry,
and
so
we'd be doing it live, right?
I'll go through that in a sec.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I know
so,
that's.
So if we wanted to do like a mix of, you know, Maine Wyatt's Q&A racism speech.
Oh fuck yes, sick.
Oh,
Okay.
so good. I was just, as soon as I saw you, I was like, I know what I'm doing.
Dude, nice.
But that wouldn't really be possible. No, it would be, but
it's still possible. There are restrictions in Tractor that you obviously, Ableton is like restriction free, of you can do anything you imagine, but in Tractor there are some restrictions, but you can still very much do it.
Yeah,
we'll go through that in a sec. That's
cool.
sick. I love it. I love that speech.
God, so good.
So good. Goosebumps, man. So good. Fuck, I want to sample that now, but I'll let you have it.
Do it. Well, we can have a battle.
Maybe we can all, fuck it. Everyone do what they want. But okay. And then yeah, other so these are things you've already learned: beat matching, phrasing, harmonic mixing. And then in this class, we'll go through these other 3: cue syncing, looping, and EQ changes at the right times. That's filters, EQ, soprano, kind of what you were talking about earlier. And the other thing I would say is think about your intro. Like, this is probably me getting a bit too biased. This is just my personal opinion. When I hear a mix starting with just a simple, boring kick drum, I'm like, really? Like, out of all the sounds you could have started with, you just started with that? Like, songs start like that for, as I told you in the first class, like just to allow DJs to mix. But if you're a DJ and you're creating like a mix or an experience, you can, even if your track starts with kick drum, maybe you can like filter it up, you know, or add effects and then tear down the effects, like turn down the effects over time. So it starts like something a bit more interesting and dramatic. Or you find a part of the song, like 1 minute in is when melodies start, and you start from there. So up to you, but think about how you start your mix and how you end your mix. So what's the final sound you're leaving them with? You know, like, again, if the song just ends boringly with a kick drum and a stop, you use things like effects to at least have a big reverb tail at the end, so that it's a bit more like curated, right? And then in terms of when, and Sarah, things like what you were asking, like timelines, This class will be the last one where I think you like learn something new. And then next class, I'll just have a class where like we review everything we've done so far. I'll show you an example of building a set. So like compiling all the info we've learned so far. So, you know, how you can go about building your set basically, putting together all the info. And then even I'll show you some things like exporting. How do you record in Tractor? I just realized you probably can't record if you don't have a paid version. We'll talk about that later. Maybe try and buy it. We'll talk about that next class, but exporting a set, uploading a set. If you've been doing transitions between this week and next week and you have some questions, like you really want these two to go together, it's not working, we can try and workshop it as a class if you message me ahead of time, things like that. And then the class after that, June 24th, that's when, like by then, upload your set to SoundCloud. You can set it to private if you like, no problem. I'll show you how to do that in the next class. And then Sarah, like what we can do in that class is each person can do a speed run of their sets. Because let's say out of 20 minutes, 80% of it is just a track playing and you're not doing anything, right? So you can like top and tail. So we'll go just to the parts where you're transitioning. But if you're doing something like sampling where there's a beat playing and a sample playing over that, like definitely include that, like show us that, show us how you worked it out. You only have 2 decks, so you're gonna have to get that sample down and then get the next track back in time. So that's a good little challenge for you to have a playlist ready and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the main idea is to show transitions only, but upload your whole sets to SoundCloud so we can all listen to each other's in entirety as well. Cool. Any questions on that?
So which one is the one that will be doing the show and tell?
24th.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Cool. And this one is just me like yeah, bringing all the info together. Cool. I can put it in the cals if you like. The other thing I just wanted to chat about is after that, would you guys, and completely feel free to say no pressure, like if this is enough and like this is good for me for now, that's fine. But I was just wondering if you'd like to continue with like a secondary version of this, which what it would be would either be like, you can either do how to use a controller, like if you're into Tractor, branch, sorry, this goes back to what you said earlier. You said you run out of time, like you have to move the filter, it's just impossible. That's because you only have one cursor right now, and a cursor is not made for DJing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you have a controller, you have like 10 fingers. It's so much more tactile. You can do things that like put the effects. I'm like doing this right now, like as if it's in front of me. You can put the effects down while you put the filter back. You can do all that sort of stuff. So I was just thinking that could be a potential class. I could pick up a controller and have a cam, or even how to make your own edits and mashups in Ableton. Ableton sounds scary, but just that part is not that scary. I don't know. I'll stop there, go around. Like, what do you guys think? Is that something you'd be interested in doing? Cool. Sarah, would you say more for controller or edits and mashups in Ableton, or both?
Well, probably both, but Ableton.
More Ableton. Nice. PD?
Both, but depends on how fast I get a controller.
That's fair. Yeah, that's cool. We can have a break, and maybe in the next class, what I'll add is I'll also do a little bit about looking for a controller. Because PD, I know I shared you some messages that would help you. I can share that with the rest of the team as well. Likit, what do you think?
Yeah, man, I'm keen actually to do a bit of Ableton. Just
Nice.
Just want to get up to that level as well, as Branch also said, that just maybe see how I'm going also next 2 classes, and then interested after that.
Cool. Nice. That sounds good. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is like, this is something I've always lived by, is you only buy a controller when you've mastered the software. Otherwise, the worst thing to do is like spend $200 or something like that, and then you have a controller sitting there, but you don't really know what you're doing, and then therefore you give up, and then it's a waste of money. So like, try and push yourself to the extent where you're like, man, I want to do more with the software, but I'm just running out of one cursor is not enough. That's when it's the right time to buy a controller. So take your time, and you have 2, 3, 4 weeks until that point. So see how you go between now and then, and then you can take a call. And also what we can do in that DJ 201, let's call it, is you can only tune in if you don't have a controller yet or something. I'll say in the calendar invite whether this class is about a controller or about Ableton. And if it's about Ableton, you can tune into that, right? Nice. Okay, cool. Before we start, I got schooled on the weekend. I wanted to correct a thing that I said in this class on beat matching. I have a friend called Rody in Brisbane. He's a fucking pro. He's like, he knows the sound so well. And one thing I shared is with beat matching, you can't mix a track where there's a human drummer. Do you remember that? I said that? Yeah, so that, you know, it makes sense. It's because like it's out of time. It's not perfectly to a grid. You can't set a grid to it. You'd actually have to warp the track or time shift the track in Ableton to get it to a certain grid and then mix it. Rody was telling me how he mixes at weddings, and he's like, you know, I ride the pitch fader when it's unquantized is the techie word for a human drummer. He's like, I ride the pitch fader when it's an unquantized track so I can mix out of it. I was like, wait, what? You can mix out of an unquantized track? And he totally schooled me. He's like, yeah, of course, man. Basically, you get the average BPM. The other track that's coming in is quantized, and then he knows whether this is going too fast. He just beat matches. He puts it a bit slower. If it's lagging, puts it a bit faster. And you only need to do it for that duration of 30 seconds or however long the transition is, and then you mix out of it. And it's going to be a bit here and there, but it's good enough that it sounds like it works. And I was like, I didn't even think of that. Like, I've always dissed beat matching a bit, like you don't need to know it these days. But now that I know that, I respect it a lot more. I'm like, fuck, that'd be a cool skill to have that I don't personally have. But anyway, if any of you thinking of becoming wedding DJs, good thing to note. Otherwise, just a random thing I wanted to correct myself on, and I told him I would let you all know that, because he's like, you got schooled. Cool. So let's actually, 20 minutes after this class has started, actually talk about what this class is about. But this one's pretty simple. First, just want to check. I always leave a bit of a challenge at the end of these. Has anybody figured this out? How can you use the tools in Tractor like cue and move to help you easily line up transitions? Did anyone attempt that at all? Nope, no worries. Because if you did, then you don't really need this class because you have answered it. Sweet. So I'm going to explain the problem to you, which cue syncing, which is a total word that I've made up and an approach I've made up, honestly, but different DJs do it in different ways. I'm going to talk to you about what the problem is and then how to solve it. And then this one's going to actually really help you, now that you understand beat matching and harmonic mixing, in building your set and building those like really smooth transitions. So you guys already understand that you have to hit play on track B on the 1, right? You find the first beat and you hit play, but you only hit play when track A, the current track that's playing, is also on a 1, so that both of them are on 1, 2, 3, 4. Everyone gets that, right? But there are so many 1s. So how do you know when do you actually hit play? Do you know what I mean? So you can all see Tractor. I'm going to show you an example. I know you've heard this transition to death. I've been using it as an example just because it might be easier now that you're familiar with it. So let's listen to this track and I'll count as I go. Sorry about the dogs at the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There might be a bit of lag, but you can probably get the idea. And then let's get an idea of this track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, cool. There's a 1 over here. There's so many 1s over here. Like, when do I actually hit play? Let me just try hitting play somewhere random and seeing what's happening. It can't be too bad as long as I get them both on a 1, right? So let's have a listen. 1. Cool. Not much is happening. Let's just loop it. Okay. And now that track's coming. Cool. So I mean, I didn't do anything funky. I just waited for a 1, I hit play, it must be right, and it was fine. But let's dive in a bit deeper, okay? So as I told you, melody goes with melody only when it's in key. These two aren't in key, 12M and 4M. And so what I'm basically doing is I'm waiting for the melody of track A to finish before the melody of track B can come in. So what I want to do is I want to find out where in track A does the melody stop, and is it just percussive? So let's have a listen. Did you hear it? Like there, right? That's also called the outro. So now let's just go ahead and drop a cue there. I'm actually going to drop a cue 3 and leave a space in between 1 and 3. I'll show you why in a second. Cool. Obviously, snap and quantize are on so that the 3 drops exactly on the bar. So cool. Okay, now let's listen to track B. When does the melody come in? Cool. So that's when the melody came in. So let me go back and drop a cue. And again, I'm going to leave a gap and I'm going to drop it at the cue number 3. Cool. Always make sure it's on the 1, obviously, right? So look out for the highlighted markers or just your new counting skills, and you know it's a 1. So now I know that, you know, if 3 and 3 line up, then basically the melody of track A is going to stop and melody of track 2 is going to come in immediately at the right time. So let me just try just that. Cool. So did you hear, it was the same transition as before, but it didn't have that beat in the middle. It was just tighter, like melody 1 finishes and melody 2 starts. It's like, you know, it just works smoothly. But here's the additional part now. Like instead of me just slamming 3 in, and this is a very simple example, but I'll show you how it applies to more extreme examples in the next example. But instead of me just slamming 3 in, I had so much opportunity between 1 and 3 to tease 3, right? To like slowly bring it in, just the hi-hats maybe, you know, filter things up, maybe add some effects, tease it. And then when 3 comes in, it's a lot more expected and not just random. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to see, like, I'm going to use this move tool. So if I select move 16 and 32, I can actually always, and I make sure that my cursor is on. So I first go Q and 3. So I make sure I'm like on the 3, right? Then I'm going to go move and I'm going to pick 32 and I'm going to see how far back can I go. I'm going to hit it back once. Okay. So I've hit 32 back once and I've gone exactly to beat 1. Cool. So now I know I'm at 3 minus 32 beats on track B. So on track A, I'm going to go click 3 and I'm going to do the same thing because that's how much headroom I have. I'm going to move 32 back once and I'm going to drop a Q there. That's why I left that empty Q. So now instead of the risk of me waiting all the way till 3, I can actually reduce my risk a little bit by just making sure that 1 and 2 line up, because then 3 and 3 will line up. One second. So do you see now that 3 and 3 are still lined up, right? So now I have opportunity to like hi-hats, mids coming in, cutting the low, and slam it in. So that's a very simple example, but I'm just going to pause there. Does that make sense what I just did, or was it too much math?
Dude, I tried pretty much doing the same thing where I've put multiple cues.
Okay.
But what I didn't do was probably move back 32 bars. But I would just line them up exactly to the point at which, you know, I would want that track to come. But
Nice.
do you think it should, like, is there a certain amount of buffer time that you should kind of tease that track? Because sometimes they don't really match together as well. Like the beat can be like off just a bit.
Yeah, you mean so you mean when right now it's like melody of track A goes up, melody of track B is like instantly in, and you're saying some like should we sometimes have a buffer?
Exactly.
Absolutely, like that. The different kinds of songs will, or combinations of songs will require different kinds of transitions. So it's okay to not have it immediately back to back like this. I'm going to show you another example right now which has it a bit longer. But I mean, does that help answer your question? Did I maybe
No, that makes sense. I was just wondering in terms of if they both have like separate melodies and they could
Okay.
sometimes kind of clash where you don't know which one you're listening to. So that's like a bit of confusing part.
So if they're right, so let's go back to the kind of rule I had in the previous class. Melody only goes with melody when it's in key. So
Okay.
there's a reason why, like, these two are not in the same key, but it sounds okay together. That's
Yeah.
because, like, the melody of both of them are not playing at the same time,
Got it.
right? So try and line them up in a way that, and the second example is actually perfect to highlight this point. Try and line them up in a way that there's minimal melodic elements clashing over each other if they're not in key. And it's mainly just percussive stuff, and you can use EQs and filters to help. I'll show you that in a sec as well. And then when they're both in, it has to be either, you know, one's mostly percussive and the other one is melodic, or they're both percussive and you have a bit of a breather. It's okay to have filler in a mix, right? Otherwise, it's just, if everything's too full on all the time, you have no context. So it's okay to, if they're both just breathing for a bit before a new idea is introduced.
Makes sense.
Cool. Sarah, did this make sense to you, what I did over here with the 3 and the -32 and lining them up?
Yes, but I think I need to learn by doing.
Practice it, no worries.
Yeah.
To make it a bit easier, and I'm going to show you another example and you can practice this in your own time. I've actually just, and this is going to be in the notes, I've listed exactly what I did. So like, first step, identify the part of track A you want to mix out of. Drop a cue, you know, call that 1.3. And for terminology's sake, we can call that the in cue. Like that's when the track goes, well, actually it should be the out cue, right? Because it's this track's going out. And then move back 32 and you can drop another cue, and let's call that the lineup cue. And then you want to identify the track B you want to mix in from. So I'm just repeating what I did earlier, but I just want to let you know it's here. So if you ever like, he did that really quick, what did he do? You know, the main thing to remember is once you've got it, this is where the opportunity comes out of cue syncing. As long as that the two lineup cues are in sync, then you have that all that time to now tease. And when it does come in and the 3 and the 3's lined up, it just looks like, damn, this guy or girl, just fucking imagine, like, you know, they just made that happen, but actually had lined it up a minute before or 30 seconds before. Cool.
Hey, man, quick question.
Yeah.
This is there any way to visually identify when it's percussive and melodic, or do you just go off ear?
Mainly by ear. Tractor's waveforms are pretty good. So have a look at this song I just loaded up, Lighten Up by Parcels, the Alex Metric remix. You can see that it's green over here and then it goes red. So, and you can actually change the colors if you go into the settings, but whatever. Like red over here means bass and green is more like high and melodic, and blue is mids. So you can see there's a breakdown over here. So you get used to looking at the waveform and understanding, but there's no real shortcut to knowing your tracks besides listening to them heaps of times.
Cool. So while playing live, like how do you already know the last part of it? Like how do you hear that part?
We'll actually chat about that just next up, bro. I'll go through this and then another way of doing it, which is looping, which my friend Shendri does heaps. And then I'll talk to you about exactly that. Like, how do you do it live? Cool. So this second one, so lighten up, right? So let's just have, sorry, look at one shortcut I just realized I can tell you is when you play a track over here, this play, there's also this cue button over here. So what that does is you can click and hold and listen. And when you release it, it goes back to 1. So why is that handy? I'll show you. So let's say you're like, I'm waiting for the next part. And remember, parts always happen in 16 or 32, especially if it's electronic 32, right? So what I'm going to do now, to show you a shortcut, is I'm going to go move 32 to the right. Now I'm going to go cue again.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds pretty similar to 1. Now I'm going to go move 32 again. And all this is much faster with the mixer. But okay. So over here, there's a little beat. Now I'm going to move 32 again. Over there's a guitar. So I'm going to drop a cue over here because that's quite melodic. So far, it's just this guy yelling, not yelling, singing, and like pretty far away. So it's like a little bit melodic, but it's not like a guitar, which is melodic, right? Yeah. So 3, something dramatic happened. The guitar lick started. So I'm gonna cue that. So that's a little way of doing it quicker. So now I'm actually just gonna do the same thing over here, the cue syncing trick over here. So I'm gonna find a part of this. Well, first I'm gonna listen to the track, and then I'm gonna find a part of it that's nice to mix out of where it's not melodic. So it's still quite melodic. That's pretty perfect. Like it's just percussive, it's just bongos. But I'm just gonna keep listening and seeing what happens. Cool. And that last bit, he actually put the kick back in. That's interesting. So I'm gonna drop a cue over there. And so now I've identified in this track A is playing. Track A is always the one on the left. That's where I want to start mixing out, let's say, is where 3 happens. And then in track B, I want to, like the melody kicks in when the guitar kicks in here. So 3 and 3 is where I want to sync up. Is everyone with me so far? Okay, cool. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go move, and I'm going to go back 32. Now if I go back 32, I go back a little bit in this track, but as you can see, I have a lot of headroom or space to go back. So the more time I have, the more opportunity, right, to tease little parts in, effect, all that stuff. So I'm just going to keep going back and count how many 32s I go back. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 32s gets me back exactly to the first point. So now I'm going to click 3 on the first track, and I'm going to go back 3 32s. 1, 2, 3, right? And I think I just fucked something up. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry. So I'm just gonna make a small change. Like while the kick comes back over here, it's actually already percussive over here where we, Cool. So sorry, I've just done this one before. I know where I like it. So so I'm gonna drop that 3 over there and then go back. I'm just doing the same thing, right? So 3 back 3 32s. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it happens to be at the beginning of the second chorus. So let's listen. Got no time for me. Got no time for me. Cool. So now what it's saying is, as long as I line up 1 and 2, right? Even though I can't see the rest of the waveform, I just know that 3 and 3 are going to line up because I've done that 3 32s to the left on the track B and 3 32s to the left on track A. They're in sync. So you just have to trust the system. Once you do this cue syncing thing, you just trust it. And anyway, if you see them coming and they're not lining up, you can use the move function to move things around by moving things 8 to the left or right or something. But anyway, I'm just going to play them and see what it sounds like. So I'm actually starting the second track with the volume down because like track A is still popping, but I can now start to tease it. And this is where Pranj like EQ filter comes in. It's in very subtly. Cool, now I can see 3 and 3 are lining up. So the guitar of 3 should come in. That worked, like the guitar came in just when the bongos. And now the kick is coming, so I have something else to look forward to in track A. And I can loop the first track, and now I can just slowly, use the tools like EQ and filter to get rid of it. Now it's getting more melodic. I can see that track B needs to be at 123. So I can use this time now to start bringing it to its original BPM. It's getting its own beat now, so it doesn't need track A's beat as much. And I'm going to kill track A at the drop. Cool. So that was like I just did the same trick, Q syncing, but it was over a longer period of time. So I had all that time in the world to like tease it and bring it in. Okay. Anything else I want to? Yeah. So the one thing that I wanna say on this is that now that you have that time and you don't have to worry about things like beat matching and beat matching falling off because it's all synced up. God bless Tractor. You can use that time to use your EQ, use filter, use effects, adjust BPM. So those are things I was doing in the second example, but probably I wasn't able to show as as highlighted as much. The one thing I want to specify, Pransh, going back to your question and even like listening to your latest mix, is where these tools are best used is if you make changes in time. Now, when I say in time, I mean at the end of a phrase, a 4-bar, an 8-bar, a 16-bar. That's when a producer adds and removes things. And so if a DJ also makes changes at the same time, it has this magic effect of sounding like it was just part of the song. Whereas if you make a change in the middle of a bar, like a really dramatic change, like cutting the bass or putting a filter up a lot, then it's like that was the DJ doing it. I can hear it. Sometimes you want that, but most of the time, what you want to do is, even though I was making those minor adjustments, I was like just subconsciously out of habit, waiting for the end of a bar before I move a filter or anything like that. Now I'm going to show you another last example, a slightly different approach, but gets you the similar result, where EQ and filter just come way more in handy. Okay. So I was at that farm in Shenri, my friend, who a couple of you know, only Sarah know, all of you know, Pransh doesn't know, Sarah and Likit know. Yeah, so he's freaking amazing DJ. He used to be on Tractor and he uses Pioneer now. And anyway, like he saw another guy do this, and it's basically the same thing as what we just did, but instead of like lining up those cues and hitting play at the right time, all he does is he selects a loop of track A. So track A just loops always on the 8 or 16, and obviously play it when track A is on the first beat. And then, so after he selects the loop of track A, he turns down everything, filters, EQs, everything. So then, and then he basically waits for a good part of track B that he can loop. So then you have 2 loops, and then he unlooped track B, the one you want to bring in. And sorry, I fucking totally messed up the names over here. Then you unloop track B and you just slowly bring things up, always in time, as I said. So always bring up the high, low, mid at the end of a phrase. And that's a really nice subtle transition. So I'm going to show you an example. Bit of quartet in the mix. So this is a really nice track Solita showed me, actually, the one on the left. A nice chill sundowner track playing on the left, right? And then on the right, he's got this track which starts like this. It's just a simple drone, and it builds into By the way, I just want to pause and say I don't like that any of you don't have headphones right now, but that's all right. Next time, all right? Cool. So now what he's going to do, this is like Shenri's like usual transitions that he was doing, is, well, also you have to note these are harmonically mixed, 1D, 12D. That's why it's going to sound even better together. Is while track A is playing, track A is the one on the left, on the right deck, he's just gonna pick a loop, and then he's gonna turn everything down. I'll show you. you can't hear anything on track B even if I bring it up, because the filter's down, all the EQs are down, that's as good as zero volume, right? And then you'll slowly start bringing elements in. You can't hear it yet, but anywhere where the beat stops, you'll be able to hear it, like coming soon. There's a little drone, it's very subtle, but that's how he likes to mix. And then he finds a place to loop track A, and now he unloops track B. Do you get what he did? So now, actually he'd be even more subtle than this. It's like you can't even hear it coming. He loves to be very like slow and subtle. And he, at the same time, start to reduce. There, you heard it? It's coming in on the second track. So it makes this impression like it came out of nowhere, but it was always there. I waited for the end of that phrase before I just slammed the highs back in. Very subtle change, but like subconsciously making those changes are what makes things sound really smooth at the end of a bar. And the hi-hat is still part of track A. Like it's adding so much life. If I play this track, I won't stop. I love that track. But you get the idea. So that's the looping trick. Do you see how it's similar to cue syncing? It's just you're looping, you wait for the right time, and when it feels right, you unloop, right? There's a trick to finding a good loop, actually, which I didn't include in this, but I'll just share with you right now. So let's say if I wanted to loop this track, why did I select that loop? Like, what if I looped somewhere? I'll just show you something. What if I... So what if I looped it here, let's say? Actually, that wasn't too bad. Let's go 4, so. So that would be a bit annoying to loop because it's like in music, there's like questions and answers, and over here it's like a question, but then you've looped it before it answers. Like, would have been better to loop the whole thing, right? It's not a good example. What I'm trying to say is actually a loop is best made when it sounds continuous when it loops back on itself, so that you can't hear the loop endpoint. Let me show you. I want to try and make a bad loop. Hang on. Okay, perfect. This would be a bad loop. Like, right? It's also because I loop not on the 1. Tractor makes it really hard to make a bad loop, actually, but you can do it if you basically place the loop where, yeah, actually let me show you like this. This would be a bad loop. You see what I'm saying? You can always correct it. You can always just select 4 and suddenly it's fine. That's a better loop. Okay. So yeah, when you're doing that trick, Chandra solution looping, definitely try and find a good loop, be subtle, bring in your EQs and filters in time, and things will be a lot better. Like, to your question on improv, like right now, I know this seems like highly rehearsed almost, especially my method. Just number one, it's completely okay to drop cues. It's just a way of like timestamping your music. And it's okay to prep a little bit, even if you know that like for example, if you just have two tracks that like those two tracks, they work really well together. You just love that, and that's just like part of your sound. It's okay to always play them one after another at a club or wherever you're playing, because that's just you. And I would say in beginner days, or if it's just your style, like sometimes like I do it, it's okay to even prep a whole set. Like let's say you know that in this mix at Q7 you start, you know, Q7 of this track, you start Q1 of the other track.
So basically you got to know your music also before. You can't do it with unknown tracks, like just, you know, got to know some.
Definitely. That's why they say, like, you know, a DJ just has to know their collection. The thing is, as you get more confident and spend more time with your music, you'll get to know your songs better. So you'll instinctively know when to like bring in the next track, or okay, hit loop now. I know what happens next.
Cool.
Forget DJing, even with songs you love, don't you like at a party like, oh wait, hang on, this is the bit. Like you just know when something's gonna happen, and it doesn't have to be a big drop. Like Pranch, that I know you love that song, Before You Let Me In, and then when it loops in the second time,
You know,
it goes in, but the kick comes, and it's such a subtle thing, but it's so good.
I know,
And so when you're DJing, you know that's gonna happen. So you know that if you have another track playing, that's when you want to cut that track, or you want to add a big reverb tail and cut it, so that you just have that moment because you like that. So anyway, when right now this seems highly rehearsed, fine, it's okay. Get it out of your head. You're not cheating. Have fun with it. Set cues, sync them up, loop, all of that. And later, when you do get to that feeling where you know your track so well, it'll be your instinct. I've got to that stage a few times when I've been in the zone a couple times in the past, and it's the best feeling, because then what happens is you go to a place or a party or whatever, and you just respond to the crowd or to the space that you're in.
Yeah.
Or if you're just at your home having a mix, to just a mood that you're feeling, you just go with the flow. And it's a mix between being prepared and being flexible enough to improv. It's a really nice place to get to. That takes a lot of time and practice, but it's all based on all of the same things we've gone through today.
Gotcha.
Cool. All right. So I mean, I guess any general questions on cue syncing, looping? It's not the hardest concept, but all good. Cool. Yeah, I guess from here, just work towards your mix. It's mostly about getting to know your music. So listen deeper to songs that you like. Listen deeper to, now that you know where to drop a cue, like where does a part change? You can speed listen. So that's what I was showing you earlier. So always select the first beat. Make sure the first beat is right. Move 32 right, cue. What happens there? And then cue, right again, cue. Nothing happens, cue again. Okay, that's a dramatic part. Like drop cues at dramatic parts is what I'm trying to get to. You can even like just keep fast forwarding until you see, look at that. That's a clear change, right? Like the bass kicks in over there. So then you want to drop a cue over there. So, and over there. So yeah, just go through, drop cues on your tracks, and you'll very quickly work towards that stage of being able to improvise if you do it like this. Nice. All right, thanks, gang.